Dear students, hope you are well. I am also doing fine. I am HOSSAIN assistant teacher in English at PLSC School and College BOGURA with you. Our today's class is on English second paper for the students of class 10. And our today's topic is ascending sentences, and this is the part 3 of changing sentences. In the previous classes, that means the part 1 and part 2, we discussed the basics of sentences and we learned some rules of changing sentences from complex to simple. And in the previous class, that means the part 2, we learned 4 rules. Rule number 1, rule number 2, rule number 3 and rule number 4. But in today's class, we are going to learn some rules and rules of changing complex sentences to simple sentences. And you know that by practicing these rules again and again, you will be hugely benefited to change the sentences, as because the changing sentences, that means transformation of sentences, there are 10 sentences are set in this item. So let's get started. Now we are going to learn some rules of changing complex sentences to simple sentences. And in today's class, we are going to learn the rule number 5. Rule number 5. If the subordinate clause starts with the word if, and the subordinate clause becomes negative, then we can change the complex sentences to simple sentences in this way. Now I am going to give you the example in support of the rule number 5. If you do not read, attentively, you will not do well you will not you cannot or you will not be able to do well in the exam. Then we can change the sentences. This is the complex sentence, and you know that if is the subordinate conjunction, and if the subordinate clause starts with the word if, then it is the subordinate clause, and a complex sentence must have at least one subordinate clause. So this is subordinate clause and this is principal clause. But in the rule number 5, which is stated that if the subordinate clause starts with the word if, then this is the word if, and the subordinate clause becomes the negative. Here we can see that the subordinate clause is in the negative sentence, do not. So this type of sentence can be converted, can be transformed into simple sentence. Do not is changed to without. Without, then gerund reading, without reading attentively, you will not be able to do well in the exam. So we can say that if the subordinate clause contains the word if, and you know that if denotes the conditional sentences, that means this type of sentence expresses the meaning of condition, or some conditions is imposed on this type of sentences. So if this type of sentence becomes the negative, then this negative form is changed to without, and then the main verb or principal verb read is changed to gerund. That means ing is added to the base form of the verb read. That means without reading attentively, you will not be able to do well in the exam. So this is the rule number 5. Now we are going to rule number 6. Rule number 6. Now I would like to modify the rules by changing some parts. If the subordinate clause starts with the word if, and the subordinate clause becomes affirmative, and this is the major difference between the rule number 5 and rule number 6. Here the rule number 6 subordinate clause becomes the affirmative, but in rule number 5 we learn that the subordinate clause becomes the negative. And if the subordinate clause becomes the negative, then the negative form is changed to without. But if the subordinate clause becomes the affirmative, then we can add the word by, and then gerund, the ing form is added to the base form of the principal verb. Now I am giving an example in support of the rule number 6. If you read attentively, you will be able to make a good result. And notice that here the subordinate clause is in the affirmative form, subordinate clause, and we can change the sentences into simple sentences. Simple. Here, if the subordinate clause becomes affirmative, then the word by comes here, by, then the gerund of the main verb, reading, by reading attentively, you will be able to make a good result. And this is the rules, or this type of sentence are known in English grammar as conditional sentences. So these rules are very important, and this type of sentence comes frequently in a question paper, or this type of question frequently are said in a question paper. So you must practice these rules again and again to have the good command over the rules. Now I am going to another rules, the rule number 7. Rule number 7. If the subordinate clause, if the subordinate clause contains relative pronoun, that means who, which, what, where, and the subordinate clause is in active voice. Is in active voice. Then we can change this type of complex sentence to simple sentence in this way. Now I am writing down the example for the rule number 7. The man who came here is a white. This is the complex sentence, and here in this sentence we can say that who came here, this is subordinate clause, and the principal clause is the man is a poet. This part is principal clause, and who came here, this is subordinate clause. And we can also say that the subordinate clause contains relative pronoun, and we can also say that the subordinate clause is in active voice. So now we are going to change the sentences into simple one in this way. The man, here the relative pronoun who should be omitted. The man, then the main part of the subordinate clause, it changes to a present participle. The man coming here is a poet. This is a simple sentences, because we know that in simple sentence there is one subject, the man, and on finite verb, this is finite verb and this is non-finite verb. So this is a very important rules, and these rules is frequently comes in the question paper. So now we are going to have a short glance that if the subordinate clause contains relative pronoun who, which, what, where, and you should also notice that the relative pronoun is always follows antecedent. Here the antecedent, the man. So here who is a relative pronoun, and the subordinate clause is in the active voice. Here the verb of the subordinate clause came. This is in active form. So we can change this type of sentences by applying the rule number 7 in this way. The man coming here is a white. We are going to the rule number 8. Rule number 8. Now I am going to modify some parts of the rules. If the subordinate clause contains relative pronoun who, which, what, where, and the subordinate clause is in passive voice. In the previous rule, we learned that subordinate clause is in active voice, but in rule number 7, the subordinate clause remains in the passive voice. So we are going to write down an example in support of the rule number 8, and notice or look at the board carefully. The school which was established in 1971 is making a good result now. So we can say that in this sentence there is also a subordinate clause and a principal clause. Here, which was established in 1971, this part is the subordinate clause, and the principal clause is the school is making a good result now. This is the principal clause, and we can also say that here the subordinate clause is in passive voice, was established, and we know that the precondition of being a verb is in passive is that principal verb is always followed by the be verb, and here this condition is fulfilled, and we can say that this is the passive voice. So we can change the sentence in this way. Simple. The school here which and was will be omitted. In 1971 is making a good result now. So this is the simple sentence, and we can say that the word which and was is omitted, and only the word established remains unchanged. So the school established, and this is the non-finite verb, and we know that the simple sentence has only one finite verb, and there may be one or more than one non-finite verb. Here non-finite verb established and the finite verb is making. So this is the simple sentences, and by practicing these rules you can change this type of sentence easily from simple sentence from complex sentences to simple sentences. So practice these rules again and again, and have a good command over the simple, complex, and compound. And you know that simple, complex, and compound is an enormous topic, and it requires a great number, good number of classes, because today we learned only the rules of changing complex to simple. Then in the next class we will learn the more rules of changing complex to compound, compound to complex. So thank you all, and thank you everybody.